On this week's episode of An Echo of Glory, we bask in that victory at Villa Park, take a deep stats dive with OPTA analyst Ali Tweedale, and look ahead to the victory against Fulham. Welcome to another episode of An Echo of Glory. Joining me once again, been gone for a long time, Gary Dymant.
Been 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
It's been longer than that. Well, it's like Spurs. You say it's a couple of days, and it's 3 weeks.
Just feels longer for you because you missed me.
I did. I've missed you a lot. And welcome back, OPTA analyst Ali Tweedale.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me back.
No. Delighted to get rid of the two Jakes. One's at Cheltenham and one's skiing.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I'd rather be skiing. It's not a great day to be at Cheltenham.
No. Well, it is if you
It
win.
obviously is always a great
If you
day
win a
to be
load
at
of money, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the weather, oof.
Yeah, awful. Okay, we're going to go straight in with club news, and we have to start with the women's team who have reached the FA Cup semi-final for the first time.
Spurs
They're on their way to Wembley. It's their first semi-final. They beat Man City on penalties following a 1-1 draw. Having been drubbed by City 7-0 recently, they played them in the league again, and the Cup hadn't scored against them all season, didn't have a shot against them in the League Cup game.
96th minute, was it?
96th minute equaliser from Beth England. If you have seen it, it was a disaster from the City goalkeeper and centre-half who came out of the box.
But City are obviously a very strong team, and they just clung in there,
Yep.
and you just never know.
And they could have beaten them in extra time, and they beat them on penalties, which is great. And they will play Leicester at home in the semi-final. Leicester also in their first semi-final. Leicester are an improving side, but that is the best draw they could have got. Potentially, the final is in mid-May,
Yeah.
12th of May.
Yeah.
Semi-finals 13th or 14th of April. They'll be on the telly, but get yourself down to, well, I say Brisbane Road. I wonder whether it would be at,
It's the weekend of Newcastle away. So
fair 99% certain the semi-finals are played at, it's not at Wembley or neutral locations. I think it will be at Spurs where they play it. You'd imagine they'll play it at the stadium then.
it's free, is what I'm saying. If they want to do it,
Yeah.
they should.
Yeah, I know a man who'd want the money. So
I'd love to go to that. It's my mum's 70th birthday weekend, so I'll have to see when it is. But if I can, I'll definitely take my daughter down to
Take your mum.
that.
she's Spurs.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's what she wants to do on her 70th birthday, to be fair.
Oh, I'm all over that. Okay, right, and so that's great. And as we said, the gap is closing. We said last week when they drew with Arsenal, so lost to Arsenal, but drew with Arsenal aggregate all season. It's just the gap is closing, and they've done really well. Talking of Arsenal, the under-21s drew 1-1 there on Friday, I think it was. No win in 3, but they're 2 points clear of West Ham, who lost to Fulham.
So Arsenal, that, because they're winning 1-0. And you know what? It's weird, right? Because I'm looking and saying, oh, yeah, we equalised in the 96th minute against City. Fantastic. And then I'm sat there going, it's so Arsenal. They equalised in the 93rd minute.
Was it that
against
late?
I think it was in the 90th minute, yeah. It was like one of the last kicks of the game, Arsenal equalised. And, yeah, it's just the difference. When we do it, it's fine. When Arsenal do it.
Of
Yeah,
course.
but it's when there's a penalty shootout win that comes after it.
Yeah.
Makes
But,
a bit of difference, doesn't it?
but it's a shame because if Arsenal hadn't equalised, actually the under-21s could have all but wrapped up the
Yeah.
league, really.
I can't quite. There's a massive league of like 30. I can't work out how many games are left
I don't know.
because it's become a national league, but it's split. I didn't have time to work it out. It doesn't matter. The under-18s also having a bit of a wobble. They drew 2-2 at home to Southampton. They're 8 behind West Ham. I don't think they're gonna win the league. But a little bit more club news is off the pitch. Season ticket prices were announced last week. After 3 home games in a row, they decided to announce them. But we don't play at home again for, a month or so. Season ticket prices up 6%. But also, the one thing that's really caught the attention is the removal of concessions for 65 or older fans. Gary, thoughts?
There's been a lot of the usual shouting and melodramatics on Twitter about this. I think this is the first major price increase since we've been in the stadium.
I think they did a 1.5% at one point.
Yeah, like a nominal one. This is the first sort of semi-major price lift since we've been in the stadium. I'm not against the 6% per se. Obviously, nobody wants to have to pay more money, but it is what it is in the context of things. I don't think that 6% prices out anybody who has a season ticket this season. I don't think anybody that has a season ticket this season is looking at 6% and going, oh, that means I can't afford it. It is reasonable in the context of no major price increases in the last sort of 3-4 years. The removal of the concessions there are areas of the ground at the moment where that's already been done, where we sit, pay full price for, a child ticket. And if my old man had decided to keep the ticket rather than my kid, then it would have been full price for him. So there are areas of the ground where that's already happened. That doesn't make it okay. No. I'm not saying that makes it okay. I thought it was pretty disgusting that I've got to pay full price for my kid and my dad had to pay full price himself, but it's just something I've already come to accept. It's not a great look, is it, to remove concessions for 65 plus. It just doesn't. It doesn't bring the fan base together, and it doesn't. It's almost like shunting out the old guard to try and bring in the new guard, except that you're at the same time pricing the new guard out because, like I said, my season ticket in my kid's name, who's 5, is full price. So how does the new guard come in? I don't really get what the plan is.
Yeah, I think the point. I agree what you're saying about concessions. I'm not happy at all about the price increase. I think the main points are this is an already expensive ground to go to. It's already, I think, second most expensive tickets in the country, for not the second best football, the second best sort of club. Hopefully one day it will be, but and I guess the other point is that I think I read that this is going to make Tottenham, this price increase is going to give Tottenham an extra around 2.5 to 3 million pounds, which is obviously in some walks of life a massive amount of money, but for Spurs that's not a massive amount of money. And would it make more sense to increase the price of pints a little bit?
That's probably why the money is going.
They've done that already. They've increased the price of pints, and actually the price of pints is almost coming to a point now in the stadium where it's like, whereas previously
they've got us in by making them so cheap for a few years.
But
everyone's pre-match routine is in the stadium.
No, but that's the point. I've already left the stadium and drink elsewhere.
Right. Well, then
because the prices are in line, so I'll drink elsewhere. So they've already done that.
But then the more people they lose through that is probably going to counteract the price of the tickets going up. So it just doesn't really make much sense for me. To me, bargain over a player sale, over 3 player sales, a little bit more and make up that money. Don't pass that cost on to your fans.
I get it, right? And ideally they wouldn't be passing the cost on, but we're sat here now saying, the cost of the 6% increase is, 2.5-3 million for the season. And we had this debate earlier this season as well, when this cost came in to people buying tickets on the exchange or whatever it was. And we calculated that actually over the course of the season, that would generate around 2 to 3 million in revenue, right? So, it's all about these incremental sort of pieces. I'm not defending the club here because I don't want to have to pay the extra 6%. But it from a fan's point of view, right? Don't put the price up of 6%. It's only 2 to 3 million. Don't put the price up this season for those buying on the exchange. It's only 2 to 3 million. Pay the 5 million more for this player. Get this player off your books for 5 million, right? Like, you can't operate as a business in this way. And I think we have to take a step back and say, look, if we do want to get to where we're going to go, and certainly at the moment it's a bit easier to say that because it looks like we're on that path. Although we're going to have another conversation about that coming up with Andrew's comments, but it does look like we're on that path. Prices are going up, okay, everywhere. So energy, whatever else it is, so I get it from the club. Ideally, they wouldn't pass it on to the fan, but that just kind of is the way of the world. And it's not like we're unique in that. Every other club is doing it as well. It's just that we started from a higher point than most other clubs.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. 6% seems high, but if you brace it, since we've been in that stadium since 2019, we've had a 7.5%, I think, rise over coming up to 5 years in April. What's my tickets now? Another 80 quid, maybe 120 quid.
Yeah, it stings.
I get the point about it's only 3 million, but if his costs of, price of bread and imports and all this stuff has gone up, if that covers that, then so be it. For me, it's the concessions. It's the legacy fan, which he doesn't seem to have any interest in. And as you said, how are these young fans going to even afford to support the club?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see, because the other thing that went with season ticket prices was we used to have included 2 cup games, right? Well, that's gone. That's been gone for a long, long time.
Yeah.
He does do decent packages with cup games, but it would be lovely to see the club come out and say, whether it's up until the Champions League knockout or up until the quarterfinal of a domestic cup, if we have a home draw, we're going to have, Champions League, we will have adults for 25 and kids for 10, right? Doesn't matter who we get, but group stage Champions League or Europa League, whatever.
The group stage is gone now.
Oh, whatever. But, that's what it's going to be. And you'd go, okay, an FA Cup or League Cup up until like quarterfinal, semi-final stages, you could say, doesn't matter who we get, it's going to be £10 adult, £5 kids. And you'll go, okay, that kind of gives something back a little bit.
I agree. And then that's part of it, is that you want to feel like you're appreciated a bit.
Yeah.
And something that would be a really good PR move like that, which isn't going to make that much difference, would make fans feel a bit happier about giving 1,200 quid at £2,000 at the start of the year.
Because the fact of the matter is, they shouldn't be building into their financial model any home games in the FA Cup or League Cup, because it's not a guarantee. So that just shouldn't be built in. You could say, I'll build in 3 Champions League games. But
it'll be four next season.
Is it? What, 4 home?
Eight group stage games.
League games.
What is that?
This isn't a discussion we need to have.
Okay, anyway, yeah.
The new format.
But the point is, they shouldn't be building into, because there's no guarantee we get into the Champions League and whatever it is. So there's an opportunity when it's something that sits outside of the financial model to not go, let's try and vacuum as much as we can, but let's give something back. And we're still going to be quids in because we've got events at the stadium. So I think if they were to take that approach, actually, it would soften the blow.
I think the other thing has been the timing of it. I read in Jack Pittbrook's article in The Athletic that a big TIFO plan for the City game. The City game could get moved anyway. If they beat Newcastle in the FA Cup at the weekend, they've scrapped that. I think the feeling, the fans play a major role in performances. We saw it with Villa on Sunday. We'll talk about that. Fans have a big part to play, and if they're not happy and they're not doing these TIFOs and all this sort of stuff, I think it's a bad look. And like we've just said, they have to try and reel that in, and they've said this is open to be looked at. I don't think it is. But we shall see. Gary, you wanted to pick up on Angie's comments about us being a club that wouldn't spend £100 million on a player.
Yeah, well, it's an important comment in the week when ticket prices have gone up and so on and so forth, and again all the noise about Levy economics, this new stadium was going to change us, and this, that, the other, and now we're not even ever going to spend £100 million on a player and all of this. I just think it created a bit of noise, so it's worth picking up on. The reality is, we are a club that can spend £100 million on a player. I think Ange has framed this incorrectly. And I think the spend that we've had since we moved into the stadium absolutely demonstrates that we can spend £100 million on a player if we chose to do so. It's more a question of we would never choose to do so, because you spend £100 million on a player and probably you don't have much left for any other players, and that is a very high risk move. There aren't many £100 million players in the league.
Well, Chelsea have bought 2 and it hasn't worked.
Right. Arsenal bought Declan Rice, and that's caused
has worked.
Okay. And if they don't win the league and they don't win the Champions League, then how better off are they than they were last season?
He's a very good player.
He's a very good player. Yeah. But if they don't win the league and they don't win the Champions League, how much better off are
if we were to spend £100 million player, you'd expect us. The next thing would be definitely now got to go and win something.
Right, but the point is, I mean, let's go through the spend in each summer.
I've got it here. Summer 2019, our first summer in the new stadium. 87.3 million, which includes a wonderful 53.8 on Tanguy Ndombele. Then the next January, gone.
Hang on, 53.8 on Ndombele. Sessegnon for 25. Where's Lo Celso?
He was in January 2020.
Was he actually? He wasn't in the summer.
The money whether he came in that summer, he was initially a loan, and we paid for him permanently in January.
Obligation to buy.
Yeah, we paid for him in the January 2020, where we spent 54.2 million. I'll just rattle through them. Summer 2021, 62.8. January 2022, 15.2. Summer 2022, 145.5. January 23 didn't spend a penny. First summer under Ange, 213.3 million. January 2024, we spent 25 million on Dragusin. And so that's a total of just over 600 million in 8 windows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 windows, averaging around about 75 million a window.
Okay, and this is spend. This isn't net spend, but that's average. And keep in mind, January is always going to be low. But you look at summer 23, 213.3 million. Yeah. That's okay. You sold Harry Kane in that window. Summer 22, 145 million. I think summer 21 actually was 60 million, with 40 million from Romero going into summer 22. So if you take out summer 22, 40 million from there and stick it into summer 21, both of those are just topping out over 100 million. The point is, we're having summers of 100 million spend over the last 3 summers now. Like, we can, and very close in summer 2019 as well. You know, when the fee for Lo Celso was just deferred. So actually, 4 out of the last 5 summers pretty much looks like it has been 100 million spent. So we can spend 100 million on a player. So the phrasing was wrong from Ange. We clearly can spend 100 million spend in any window. That's a lot of money.
Do you think we want £100 million player? They seem to come in with if you came into this club as £100 million player, I'm not going to talk about this imaginary player's character. They might swan in. This looks like a really connected group. Would you even want a Caicedo or an Enzo, £100 million player?
I mean, it puts another layer of pressure onto a player, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think City.
And the team.
I don't think City signed anyone for more than sort of 60 million until they bought Jack Grealish, and then they bought Guardiola as well.
Yep.
But they had like a limit of sort of
Laporte
60.
was around 60, 58.
Yeah. They
It
bought
was.
loads
They
of
bought
60.
loads of 60
They spent
million.
loads of money. They
Yeah.
don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But they didn't want. I think that was in part for that reason. You didn't want to bring in. I think the goalposts have moved slightly these days because 100 million is a slightly more normal amount of money to spend.
It's not a normal amount of money.
No, but we've
It's
seen
a more
3
norm-
recently,
it is a
2 at
more-
Chelsea.
It is a more normal amount of money.
And Chelsea won't be doing that for a long time. I don't care what people say. Their spend is unsustainable. And I
I
think they're
know.
a
I'm
club
just
in
saying
big
it.
trouble.
It is a more. There's no argument. It is a more normal amount of money.
you've
But
got-
I don't think what Spurs need this summer is one £100 million player. I think they need.
But
two
also,
60
I don't
million pound
understand
players.
these fans that are saying, "Oh, you know, this is just a comment on Levy. We can't spend 100 million. We can spend 100 million. We've demonstrated we can spend 100 million, but it would be the wrong thing to do." And actually, why are we not spending, or not why are we not? On the one hand, they're saying we won't sign a £100 million player. On the other hand, you've got Pat Sarr, who actually could be a £100 million midfielder.
He's great.
Right? Like, you know, so, and then we've just signed Bergvall. Now, this is the way to do it properly. And, you know, whether it's next season after the season after that, you know, Sarr, Bergvall, pick them up for pennies comparatively, and they're 100 in the transfer market when they're fully established players, 60 to £100 million players. That's a much better model and a much better way to do things.
There could also have been a bit of, I can't go out and say we're going to spend £100 million because then when you go looking for a player,
Of course, it jacks up
clubs
prices.
100%.
100%. I think people need to take a step back from what is said in the media versus the reality. The reality is we have spent 100 million in a number of the last summer windows. So we could buy a player for 100 million. It would be ludicrous to do it. It would be madness on so many levels.
People probably want £100 million player and then
they want the 3 other players for 30 million. And Ange actually went on to qualify it. He said, and even if I could sign a player for 100 million, I would rather 2 for 50 or 3 for 33, you know, of the right players. So he isn't actually saying we're not going to spend 100 million. He's just saying that's the way. I wouldn't want a £100 million player, and I completely agree with him.
we've mentioned spending and we've mentioned Levy, so maybe we'll have that Tottenham away commenting on our YouTube, telling us that we're all Levy stooges. Right.
It's just common sense.
I agree. A positive, Sunday's game at Villa Park. I will go through the lineup. Vicario in goal. Porro was back. Romero, Van der Ven, Udogie, Bissouma and Sarr chosen in midfield. Kulusevski, Maddison, Johnson and Son. I'd heard a rumour that Werner might have been injured. And then he came in and he was on the bench. Don't know whether Johnson was always going to start or whether Werner was going to start, and then I potentially got a knock in training, whatever. I'm interested in our lineup. Obviously, when Porro and Udogie are back, it makes such a difference to Romero and Davies. I was actually really interested in Villa's lineup. I won't read the names, but they went to 5 at the back for only the second time this season. They've done it against Brentford, which was to match up against Brentford. For me, that was almost a concession from Emery, which is unlike him, that he was scared of Tottenham. Rightly, we're a good team, but I thought it odd the way they set up.
Yeah, I think Jamie Carragher did some good analysis of it on Monday.
Friend of the show,
Monday
Jamie
night Football.
Carragher.
Friend of the show, Jamie Carragher. And he suggested that Emery had been thinking maybe too much about Tottenham, whereas they went sort of, as you say, but that maybe they should have thought about themselves a bit more. And they basically went man for man when Tottenham were playing out from the back. And what that just meant was that one mistake, one slip up. I mean, the first half, it didn't really matter because neither team really
Just-
got out of
yeah.
first gear. But in the second half, it meant that one slip up and one person loses their man, and Pape Sarr gets in down the right, and it's 1-0. And it really put too much pressure on them individually, whereas they are a very good collective team, and maybe they should have thought about themselves a bit more and not been quite so
Yeah.
scared of Spurs.
I watched it back yesterday on Monday. It's a lot easier to do so when the nerves aren't jangling. I thought it was our most complete performance of the season.
Oh, I thought it was a fantastic performance from beginning to end. And people will talk about the first half. You said that we didn't get out of first gear and whatnot. I disagree. I thought we absolutely bossed Villa in that first half. And
Do you? Because I don't.
I do. I think we kept them at arm's length, and you know,
Arm's length, yes, but I don't think we bossed it. I think
no, I think I wasn't worried. I mean, their best two opportunities in the first half came from, and I think he had a good game. So I'm going to try and say this in the right way. But their best two opportunities in the first half came from Bissouma. Bissouma was quite literally their most creative player. When he passed them on the edge of the box, that was a great opportunity. And then when the commentators actually laid into Romero for giving the ball away, but Bissouma pinged it at him from 5 yards away, and I was like, "What do you want Romero to do with that?" And that created another opportunity for them. Bissouma otherwise was very solid and had a good game. So
Could have given away a penalty. Very close.
It was a good challenge.
clumsy.
I don't think it was clumsy.
No, I think it wasn't a penalty, but I thought it was a bit clumsy.
I agree, but I think if it had been given, it wouldn't have got
Agreed.
overturned.
Yeah, agreed.
I would have been upset if it had been given because it wasn't a penalty. But I thought we controlled them. I think we had them at arm's length. I think we completely quietened down
That I agree with. Quieting down, and it was key. Villa score early, and it's probably a different game. That crowd, they can really get behind him. It can be really raucous and accordion in there.
It was just a really professional performance.
Agree. I totally agree. We kept them at arm's length. I don't think either side bossed anyone in the first half.
Yeah,
the first half was just was irrelevant.
Okay. Say we bossed them, might be overstepping it. I thought we controlled it. I thought we were in control. I don't think we looked troubled.
No,
I
agreed.
felt in the first half I felt we were more likely, even though we didn't have a shot on goal or a shot on target, and people will look at that. I look at it more in the sense of, you look at the goals that Spurs score, and you know they're goals before they've gone in because the quality of the chances is so good. You know, that's the way that we play. We try to get in behind the fullback, cut it back, bosh. Open goal from somewhere between 6 and 10 yards, basically, right? We do it time and time again. But it's a hard chance to create. At the same time, there were a number of occasions when they got a toe on that ball or whatever it was. I also felt, and I know you hate this, the referee helped them a hell of a lot in that first half. We nicked the ball off them. James Maddison was going berserk at the ref because we nicked the ball off them. In fact, our second goal...
There was one Bissouma one, wasn't
early
it?
on.
Was so frustrating.
But the second goal was a carbon copy of exactly what we had done in the first half. We swarmed them. We closed the man that was moving into midfield, nicked it off him, and you're away. I mean, that is a goal-scoring opportunity. Like, as soon as you turn the ball over there, and the ref saved him on 3 or 4 occasions, and I was going mad. I was like genuinely mad. Even more so when Sarr got booked for falling over and
not a booking.
A minute after Cash had hacked down Johnson on the wing. So I think, you know, they had a bit of help. I thought we looked the more likely to score without. Yeah, I did. I thought the possessions we were getting into, the way we were probing.
But some of those balls, like Watkins, sort of gave Romero a bit of trouble. I thought on the break.
We literally reduced them to the ball over the top. And people say again, you know.
But I just think that Spurs didn't create very much. I agree they were in control more than Villa, but I don't know.
This is the point I'm trying to make. It's not that I agree with you. We didn't create very much. That doesn't worry me too much because, you know, it's at some point in the game you're going to create, and when we create, generally it's a goal. Like it because of the quality of the chance that we create and how we're trying to do it. It's a goal. And like I say, we didn't create much because I felt a couple of times they got bailed out by soft decisions, and a couple of times they got that toe on the ball, which just stopped it getting through or whatever it was. But
the final ball was a little poor at times.
But the positions we were getting into, the way we were pressing them, the very little out we gave them, looked to me at some point
it was
like
coming.
The team most likely to crumble was going to be them.
Do you guys think there's anything like premeditated or thought out about a sort of slower, more conservative start? So Spurs have now failed to score in in the first half of each of their last 4 Premier League games.
Well, bear in mind 3 of those were at home against teams who weren't interested in attacking. And just sat there.
Yeah, it's their longest such run since around the turn of the year, 22-23 under Conte. 14 of their last 16 goals, Premier League goals, have been in the second half of matches. Is there? Do you think there was anything like?
No,
because that's come up. Well, not. So we've only dropped points from a winning position once in the last 14 games.
Really?
And that's after that run, since that run of 5 games in a row, just after the Chelsea game, including the Chelsea game, where Spurs scored first and dropped
What
points
game
every
was that?
time. The 5th one.
What was the last one in the last?
Wolves.
No, West. No. Talk amongst yourselves for a second.
But in answer to your question,
Everton.
oh yeah,
And that was only that was 90
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
minute.
yeah.
the slower start frustrates me. I do notice that we aren't moving the ball with the intensity that we do as the game goes on.
But I'm saying is that maybe there's some thought there because the more Spurs attack, the more open they leave themselves to counter-attacks. And having gone 1-0 up and then pushed for another goal, they've thrown a lot of leads away. There was a run where they threw a lot of leads away, and that's not happening anymore.
We're also scoring in clusters. We scored 2 in 3
Yeah,
twice on
yeah.
Sunday. We scored 3 in 11 against Palace, 3 in 8 against Brentford. One thing that
Yeah.
Luke Robinson, friend of the show, Villa fan, who said on I watched his vlog after the game, he said that Villa's legs were mentally tired. And I think he meant that. He didn't get his words mixed up. He said, I know they had the Ajax game, but he said they looked really tired in the second half. I think the way we play, even at home when teams can't be bothered to they just give us the ball. Eventually, you will wear a team down mentally and physically by the press, by the way. I know it's 82% possession against Palace, nothing happened. Palace have got to move the whole time. They're not just standing there waiting for us to do something. We're moving them, and eventually you will crack.
Yeah, and this isn't a problem I think that is unique to Tottenham. City struggle to break down teams when teams want to sit in a very low block. We've seen them score late. Liverpool scored a very late goal. I can't remember who it was against a low block team the other day. Forest, yeah. Finally, they broke them down. So this isn't a problem that is unique to Tottenham. It is if you're playing against top class opposition, and when they sit in a low block and they're organised, it is about wearing them down physically and mentally. And I look back to the cup game that we played against City at home, and I think that for me was one of the best examples of a pressing team that I've ever seen from City. And I was tired as a Spurs fan watching it.
Same.
So I can only imagine what it must have been like. I remember Postecoglou came in, and I think he said something to the effect of, I want teams to fear playing us in the sense that we're horrible to play against. That City team that turned up at our place that night in the Cup were horrible to play against. They were relentless. They were absolutely relentless. Now, the goal came in the end from something a little bit contentious or whatever. I thought that we did unbelievably well to hang in. That was testament to ourselves that we hung in against that. And City didn't create huge amounts.
They did in the
that
last
game.
15, 20 minutes.
But they didn't, it wasn't as though for all that possession, for all that territory, they didn't have huge amounts of clear-cut chances because we sat in that low block, and it was very, very difficult, and they found it hard.
But eventually...
And eventually they scored through something that you're like, oh, you've done all of that, and then you concede like that. But a mistake is always going to happen when you're playing a team that is that relentless. So in answer to your question, I kind of think it ties in with that. We'll keep the ball. As long as we've got the ball, they've got to think, they've got to be switched on. They've got to be the ones that are in position. One of them slips, one of them's out of position, one of them whatever, and then when they get the ball and they pass out, bang, we're on them. And I thought we did that mercilessly against Villa. And it was the most complete performance I've seen from us this season because we were so on top of them. And it just felt like they were going to crack. And when they did, the floodgates opened.
Yeah, it's all fair points. I was just I've been wondering if that run of 5 games in a row where Spurs scored first and gave away a result every time, if Ange has looked at that and thought, there's a problem there I need to address. But I don't know. Maybe Spurs are just better at controlling games, and
I think we're maturing as a team.
Yeah,
that game and the game since, you've got to keep in mind that Van der Ven wasn't in those 5 games, and he makes such a difference to how we defend and our ability to press as well. You can press 5-10 yards higher, knowing that you've got, Speedy Gonzalez behind us. It makes it a bit easier.
Yeah.
So there's mitigation around it, but I think what this game showed, and what the games in the last couple of weeks have showed, there's been more of a maturity about all of the performances, And this was, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We could go to Fulham and lose, right? But this looked like a really mature performance from Tottenham in a very tough game.
Can I ask, I've not had you on for a few weeks, either of you. We've had 3 home games in a row. Wolves, Palace, my brain's gone. Wolves, Palace and Brentford. I'm going to refer to the stats. So Gary, talk amongst yourself.
Brighton.
Brighton. In all 3, and I was getting frustrated with the way we were playing, and you rightly were having a pop back at me, Gary, on WhatsApps. I look at the Villa game away from home. It's very easy. It's easier to play against a team that want the ball, and Villa did want the ball, and they are quite expansive and open. So there were gaps. They absolutely played into our hands. Wolves come, Brighton come. Well, Brighton like to play, but Palace come and they'll sit. The frustration for me has been how we are going to play against these low blocks at home, because that's what teams are going to do.
Again, there's a couple of things on this. I think I think Ange, there was a quote somewhere, I can't remember what it was, but I think somebody said that Ange mentioned this week that he wants more players like Maddison.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about this. He said our squad's not done, and we know it's not done.
Yeah.
If you're one of who are the sitting ducks here? Who are the players going, well, that's me?
But we know there's space in the squad. You know that Sessegnon's done. You know that Lo Celso's done. Skip, Højbjerg. Royale is questionable. There's spaces in the squad.
He said we need more tens.
You know, whether you keep Werner or not is another one. But I definitely think we need 1 or 2 more players in the Maddison mould. I wonder if Bergvall could be one of them. I think he's a bit deeper sitting than a 10. But I agree with that, because you look at City, who play against these low blocks so often. They've got Doku now, who's a powerful, fast winger. But a lot of their success over the years under Pep have been built on the 2 Silvers, Foden, Grealish. They're not speedy players, but they're hugely technical players that will just retain the ball, win you those free kicks, pick a lock, go past a man, drop the shot, take 2 men out of the game. The technical players, and I think that's what we need to be looking at, by way of the sort of player. But the pop that I was having back at you is you were sort of, and look, it's all opinions, right? So nobody's right or wrong, but you were getting frustrated with, well, this is the way we play, mate, right? And what I was saying to you, and what my point was, and I think Villa and Emery highlighted it beautifully this weekend, actually, is you can tweak the way you play, and there should be consideration for who you're playing against, and sometimes, but fundamentally, you shouldn't change from the way you play, because your principles and what you want to try and do on the pitch, because you do it so well, and that's the point. You carry on doing it. You'll get to a point where you do it so well that actually you shouldn't need to change the way that you play.
We had James Holland, the guy who played under Ange, kept saying principles. I'm going to drop another name here. I was at work yesterday, and we had Joe Hart came in, and I was talking to him because he's at Celtic. He played under Ange at Celtic, and he basically said exactly the same thing that James Holland had said. Ange is principled. If you make a mistake, it's on me. Joe Hart was saying how he, early on in his career with Ange, he gave away a goal with misplaced a back pass, and the guy scored against Livingston or something. He's like, oh my God, he's going to kill me. Ange went, no, that's on me. I've asked you to do this. Where do you get? Have you been to all the home games as well? Have you been frustrated by the way we've been playing at home, or you just see this as something we're learning?
Both. I mean, like there's definitely frustrations where it looks like Spurs are moving the ball around in the final third sort of slowly. But
I also, in the final third, where it frustrates me is Romero at the back, and he rolls his foot over it, and then he's like,
I said final third sort of just like
to going to mention Phil Tilt in a minute.
Just as a like when we're controlling the ball in the opposition's half. Yeah. I don't know. There are times when it feels like switches of play could be made quicker and stuff like that. But also, it's quite nice to have a style of football that you can trust in, and you've seen work, and kind of like, to be honest, I spend most of my time getting frustrated at people around me shouting things like "get it forward" and stuff like that, which I wasn't quite. That's not quite what I was saying before when I was saying move it around a bit quicker. So yeah, there is a bit of frustration, but it's nice to just sort of think, well, he knows better than me.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. They're not just standing on the ball because they think, you know what, 0-0's actually a good
all
result
right.
in this game. They're not. That's not
there's
what's
got to be
happening.
thinking behind it. But let me throw it back to you, because you often, I feel like you sometimes wish we would change the way that we play, but I feel like, you know, you look at Villa, who fundamentally changed the way.
Yeah,
that
and they got it
play.
wrong.
And then actually, I thought Carragher, the other point that Carragher made was that Emery did this a lot at Arsenal as well, when they were in a very good position in the top four, and then towards the end of the season, he started changing it up and deviated from what they had done and their principles as they had been, and it all went wrong. So I'll throw it back to you. When you are sort of getting frustrated with this is the way we play, mate, what is it you want?
All right, so I actually mentioned this to Mr. Hart yesterday. I said to him my frustration was when Udogie and Porro were injured, he just chucked Emerson and Davies there and went, go and do what they can do.
Okay.
And they can't do it. And actually, Joe Hart said back to me, these are his principles.
Yep.
Stick by it. Emerson and Davies would have been confident that they could do it. Maybe they don't do it as well, but this is Ange. He basically said, trust in Ange.
Yep. So you accept it from Joe Hart, but not when I said it.
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough.
But
fair enough.
But that was that actually was my main frustration, that he against, again, I can't remember who it was, Wolves. He chucked them in and went, go and do what they do.
Yeah, and this was my thing on it, right? Is I agree with you to a point, right? Where if I'm looking for 3 points in a game, in that given game, and I'm looking at that given game as being the be all and end all, the last game that ever's going to be played, yeah, change the way you're going to play, but it's not the last game that's ever going to be played. Our season isn't going to hinge on it.
Yeah.
And his tenure at Tottenham is much more important over the next 4 or 5 years than that one game. So the players need to know, whoever's coming in, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I get
you
it.
need to be up to
I get it. You know, you say it's not about right or wrong. You were right and I was wrong.
No. I can understand it in anyway.
I get it. Another opinion divider is Brennan Johnson. I've sat here many weeks gone, just want to see it.
I'm excited on this.
Well, I just want to see a little bit more. And I feel like someone's got hold of him in the last few weeks and gone,
give him a shake, haven't they?
be a bit arrogant, not on the ball as well.
No, aggressive.
Aggressive. He's taken players on. He's winning tackles. He was aggressive against Palace with
Changed the game
equaliser.
against Palace.
But his celebration's very arrogant. All this sort of stuff.
Love it. It's got a bit of edge to him.
Someone's woken him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he needed a bit of a break, didn't he? He'd just played too much football.
Started a lot. You'd say
Yeah.
Ange,
I think I said that last time.
I think you said Ange said he was playing too much.
Yeah, well, it was just kind of like he clearly wasn't bought to start every game straight away, was he? And he needed a bit of time off, and he's really benefited from having, well, I suppose partly from coming on against tired legs, but from having to play a different role as a substitute. And yeah, I agree. On Sunday, I thought he was a bit more aggressive with the ball. I thought there were a couple of times that he kind of beat a man, and then it was like, there's your chance. Like Son made a run across him, feed a ball through, or like Maddison's demanding it and he kind of played it back. In the first half, I'm talking about, which kind of was something to just get frustrated about when you're looking for something to get frustrated about. But no, I thought he was really good. And when you were talking earlier about the £100 million player thing and sort of Declan Rice, the actual amount of money to fans, when it's not your money, doesn't actually matter if they turn out to be good. And I think already £50 million, some people looked at Brennan Johnson and thought that's quite a lot of money for a player who's played 20 games in the Premier League or whatever. But the way he's going, that £50 million is
Very
well
never ever going to feel like a lot of money, is it? Like he's not far off already, sort of repaying that.
Numbers have been good.
I think that,
to be fair,
and especially sort of moments that change
Crucial
games,
moments.
crucial moments.
Big moment. He scored the winner, popped up at the far post against Brighton, came on against Palace, and he really did change that game just by getting at them a bit quicker. And people will say, centre back, whose name I forget now, he's a good player.
Joachim Anderson.
Anderson.
Yeah.
Well, and then Lerma.
They will say that Anderson made a mistake and slipped and whatever. But when you're putting players under pressure and you're on top of them, you are encouraging that mistake. Okay, and he did that, and he was aggressive. And that tackle that he went through Lerma, right? I actually thought, I sat there, I was like, well, Lerma will win that. And when Johnson got there first and went through him, I was like, well, that's a new Johnson. And then created the goal that got us back in the game. And I thought it was fantastic against Villa. And there's a real player there. There is a real player. And I think if he continues to show, you mentioned the arrogance, I think it's the aggression. If he continues to show that.
It's belief in himself.
And it looks like the last couple of games, I think we said a couple of times, when you come to a club like Tottenham, you've got to know that at times you need to step up and be the man. You need to take the weight on your shoulders and get us over the line. And it looks like he's starting to do that. So loads of optimism for him.
I think if Ange has the luxury of being able to manage his game time, that will make a massive
100%.
difference. And just having to play him at 90 minutes every game and then maybe bring him off for Brian Hill at the end wasn't an ideal situation for anyone, not least Johnson himself.
Okay, nice to put Villa back in their box because they've been a bit above their station, creating this sort of rivalry that we don't really know. Yeah, they're rivals at the moment because they're fourth, but that could be in any team. We don't need to create more rivalries. Favourite moment for me on Sunday was Bentancur fouling Matty Cash. The 4 goals were great, but that was lovely to see. Because I'm that petty, and if that was me, I'd be going after Matty Cash.
He did it just in the right way, didn't he?
Little swat.
It was a little. I'm not going to get in trouble here, but I'm going to let you know that.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I thought the whole game was great. I was actually thinking about who the man of the match,
all of them,
could and should have been, and there is a big case for Mickey van der Ven. There is, I think, a huge case for Sonny. A huge case for Sonny. I thought Udogie was fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant.
But that boy Sarr the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just about. Okay, he put in that Beckham-esque cross, which was just
unreal,
delicious.
He nearly fell over whilst running.
I was thinking this. I was thinking if he hadn't have nearly fallen over, the goal probably wouldn't have happened because he would have been a yard or two ahead of Maddison.
Yeah, he kind of stumbled.
Slowed it down a little bit. Him down and slowed, and that gave Maddison the chance.
I didn't know he had that cross in him.
It
was phenomenal. But
I don't think he did. Really.
But even put that to one side, it was such a mature performance from him. He was absolutely brilliant. And this again goes back to, is he a £100 million player? No, I don't think so. But we picked him up for 15, and I reckon teams, if they could get him for 70, 80 today, would bite your arm off for it. So
it's not quite my favourite moment of the day, but I have to say I was really, really pleased, not just because it meant West Ham went down to 10 men, but that was given as a red card, because I feel like it's such an obvious red card, but because it was kind of like a petty, like almost like a shirt tug, kind of like stopping the attack. I thought it was like a weaker ref would have just given a yellow for that, but it was a horrible.
I'd like to think that VAR would have pulled it back if a yellow had been given. Do you think? I'd like to think so.
Who knows?
I don't know.
But,
it was such a
it was horrible,
unique kind of situation.
Well, this is it.
So horrible.
There's no playbook on this. That's why it was good to see.
I think this is a comment on Villa, right? And a couple of people have said that. I think it was also mentioned, maybe on Monday Night Football. I don't remember that they are a nasty team. And they are a team, we saw it at our place, when it's going against them, they try to interrupt the flow and they try to change the momentum. Maybe by taking out a player.
Yeah, but that's your captain. There was a break
shot.
Hang
on. Matty Cash did it. Matty Cash did it against Bentancur, who was dictating that game, and we were well on top, and that completely changed the outcome of the game. And he's gone and done it against Udogie, who was tearing down that left-hand side in the second half, and the first half, by the way. He was fantastic. And it just seems to be a characteristic of Villa that I hope refs are starting to pick up on it and realise this is a nasty team.
I was worried about Udogie when he got up and fell back down. I thought it was because it was kind of like Bentancur who got up, carried on, and then was like, no, something's actually really wrong here.
I've seen a few Villa fans say that it was only a red card because of the overreaction from the Tottenham bench. No, the Tottenham bench overreacted because the tackle was so disgusting.
You know who it was who went in?
Brennan Johnson.
My aggressive little man. Like he went flying, but he knew, but good, brilliant. I want to see that. When one of your players is taken out like that, the last thing I would ever want to see is Spurs players saying, fly in there, let it be known. That is disgusting.
Son's reaction was ridiculous. And you know, Son's a very mild, nice guy. You knew it was bad from Son's reaction. Anyway, most surprising stat of the season is that was only McGinn's second red card of his career, and the first one was rescinded. So actually, he's not been sent off once in his career.
But he has now.
Which I was very rescinded. No, they can't. They won't rescind that. Yeah. Okay, so great win. We agree, probably the most complete performance of the season.
The scoreline is less important. The performance was...
The scoreline's great.
The scoreline's great. The performance was absolutely brilliant.
Right, we can't have OPTA analysts Ali Tweedale on this show without bringing up some numbers. So where should we start? What that has done is the race for fourth place. Had we lost 8 points, this would all look very different. So as I've said to you before...
Do we preface this with the coefficients and talk about the importance of fourth rather than fifth?
All right, let's do the coefficients first. In a nutshell, no, we're going to do fourth because everyone knows that fourth gets you into the Champions League.
Okay, let's leave it.
Yeah, we're going to do fourth. Yeah. As I've always said, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see the image. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can also watch us on Spotify. If you're listening to us through something else, don't do that. Find us on YouTube. You can see these images that we're going to put up from OPTA Analyst, starting with the race for fourth, the probability of finishing in the top four graph. Ali, it's over to you, Michael Fish.
I should say to anyone who's not able to watch, this is all available on the website, optaanalyst.com. Google OPTA Analyst or the Analyst.com.
And it's worth looking at just to have a great laugh at United.
And the visual accompaniment will help.
We'll put a link on our Twitter as well, at EOGTHFC.
Nice. So the long or short of this is that OPTA have a model which predicts the chances of every team finishing in every position, which is calculated throughout the season. That's based on past performances, future game difficulty, all sorts. It's very complicated. So what it does is it runs the season. It does 10,000 simulations.
Supercomputer.
Wow.
The OPTA
supercomputer.
10,000 simulations of the season.
Yeah, and that is what you're seeing is the proportion of those simulations in which each team finishes in the top four. So before the weekend, Villa's chances of a top four finish were 65.3%. Spurs were 32.1%. And as you can see on that graph, the purple line for Aston Villa plummets at the most recent point, and Spurs
the dot is the beginning Sunday morning. Yeah,
the dot is Sunday morning, which is those numbers I just mentioned, and then there's the lines cross, and Spurs have shot up to a 55.1% chance of a top four finish, and Villa are down to 42.2%. So Spurs and Villa have kind of traded places a fair bit in the month of February, but overall, Villa have been more likely than Spurs to finish in the top four, according to the supercomputer, since the 1st of December.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you look at that, December, we were worlds apart.
Yeah, exactly. So it just kind of speaks to how significant that result was on Sunday, because as well as it being 3 points against a rival, there was an 8-goal swing as well, which is almost another point. So yeah, just it meant Spurs were back in the driving seat. And a small mention, what Gary was laughing at was Manchester United are just trickling along at the bottom of the graph, 2.3% chance.
I noticed our highest peak, that dot is probably about 20 past 8 on that Monday night against Chelsea.
Yeah.
It just completely drops down.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting, and it shows that on this, people have gone, Spurs have got a game in hand. Even if we lose to Chelsea, I think we'll outscore Villa, I have to say. I'm a pessimist.
The Chelsea game is basically a free hit, but as I mentioned, this takes into account fixture difficulty, which we'll come to as well.
All right, let's talk about the coefficient briefly.
Yeah, so top four, we talked about top four first, I guess, because fourth guarantees you Champions League. There is a chance that fifth will get you a Champions League spot this season. The general, it's impossible to explain this in its entirety presumably you don't want me to talk for 45 minutes.
No, thanks.
The general crux of it is that 2 of the extra 4 places in next season's Champions League is going from 32 teams up to 36. 2 of the extra 4 places are given to the country whose teams perform best in Europe this season. So if Man City win the Champions League, Liverpool win the Europa League, and Aston Villa win the Conference League, then England are likely to get an extra place.
Is it only this season? Because I had the understanding it was the coefficient over.
So 2 of the positions are based on last 5 seasons. 2 of them are based on just this season alone. So they will change every season to season.
Okay.
So we can still talk about the top 4. And it's also average performance. So England don't have a better chance because they've got 8 compared to someone with 6, although you do have more chance of winning it. But it's average. It's the average performance. So at the moment, it's looking like England will get one of those spots, but West Ham lost to Freiburg, and Germany are probably England's biggest rivals for one of those spots. There's no guarantees that Villa will be, especially after that performance on Sunday, that Villa will get past Ajax.
Ajax are pretty poor, but yeah, you don't know.
They're improving though. They've had a way
Drawing
better run.
2-2 at home to Fortuna Sittard is not a great result.
Tough team to play against, as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, Arsenal are 1-0 down in the first leg.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to go supporting Arsenal, but
it would help.
it would help. It would help.
Okay.
So generally speaking, I think what Tottenham want to do is focus on getting in the top 4, and then if they finish 5th and 5th gets them an extra spot.
I think
it's a
Italy are in
bonus.
pole position, aren't they, at the moment?
Yes, Italy are in pole
So
position.
we're scrapping with Germany. Like, you want West Ham to knock Freiburg out.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so on the base of the top 4 probability, this is the top 5 version, and I think it's fairly obvious now. You never know in football, but it looks like a Spurs and Villa.
Yeah, so what this is basically saying is that Spurs are 91.6% chance, Villa 90% chance of a top 5 finish. That leaves Man United as the only team really with any chance of overtaking them, with 12.7% chance. So it will take the specific numbers here aren't really important. The point is just that based on the season so far, past seasons, and the difficulty of
fixtures, did you say?
I did,
Oh,
yes.
Here you go.
And so yet another graphic has just popped up. This is using OPTA's power rankings, which uses past performances to rank every team in world football. The best team in the world is ranked at 100. The worst team is ranked at 0. And
who is that worst team?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's someone that you won't have heard of. And Man City are currently the best team in the world, having just won the treble. So this uses a power ranking for each remaining team and takes an average to give to rate the difficulty of each team's remaining 10 fixtures. So as you mentioned before, the Spurs have an 11th game left, but we've taken that one out of here, partly because it doesn't have a date set, so you don't know where it would go in that list, but also because it's basically a free hit. Think of it as anything in that is a bonus. And what this is saying is that Aston Villa have the second hardest remaining games.
And no John McGinn for 3 games.
And no John McGinn for 3 games.
West Ham, Wolves and City on this.
And Spurs are down at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th most difficult. So this isn't an exact science, and maybe in reality Spurs would be the 8th most difficult, but all it's saying is that generally speaking, Villa's games are the more difficult.
It's also
at the more difficult
saying
end
that Arsenal have a much tougher run in than Liverpool and City, which is nice to see.
Yes, but concentrating back on Spurs for a second. So something that I've noticed about Villa, so they've still got to play the top 3, so do Spurs, but they've got to play the top 3 plus 7th, 8th and 9th, while their bottom half games are against Chelsea, Bournemouth, Palace and Brentford. So nobody in
Chelsea
the bottom.
aren't bottom half anymore, are they?
So maybe no, they are. They stayed in 11th.
Did they?
Yes, I'm fairly sure. I'm pretty sure they did.
Okay.
So Villa don't have anyone in the bottom 5 left to play, and their last 4 results against current top half teams are 4-0 defeat to Spurs, 2-1 defeat to United, 3-1 defeat to Newcastle, and 3-2 defeat to United.
I don't want to.
And those are 4.
We should get him in more often.
Spurs are by far the most consistent of those teams.
Yeah.
To lose 3-1 at home to Newcastle, who are really out of sorts and have been crazily bad away from home. That was at home for Villa. And well, by comparison, Villa's results against the bottom half, recent results against the bottom half have been win, draw, win, 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 win.
Flat chat buddies, basically.
And they've played against those teams in the bottom 5.
But I don't want to criticise the supercomputer, but maybe at this stage of the season you don't want to play Forest, Luton.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take that into account. But also, I do think that's overblown a little bit.
They're rubbish because they're rubbish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You definitely do want to play Burnley and Sheffield United.
Not unless you're West Ham. But
All right.
Yeah.
Talking of middle of the road teams, we've got one coming up on Saturday. We'll move it on to Fulham. Should we talk to someone who knows a lot about Fulham?
let's do that.
Let's do that. Delighted to be joined by Fulham reporter for The Athletic, Peter Rutzler. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
So I read your post-match report after the defeat to Wolves and some fan comments. Even Gary O'Neill had said Fulham had a great bench. So the squad is growing. Results have been good and then not good. You beat Man United, which is rare. A rare win at Old Trafford. Beat Brighton, then lose at Wolves. Is consistency the next step now for Fulham?
Yeah, I think most Fulham fans would say that's always been an issue. Consistently inconsistent, whether that's going up between the Championship and the Premier League or just within the Premier League itself. But yeah, certainly at the moment, consistency is the key thing. And I think the frustrating thing about the defeat at Wolves was that this was probably Fulham's best run of the season so far. As you mentioned, the squad is looking stronger. They've got some key players back from injury. They were on 1 defeat in 6, and that defeat was against Villa. And a victory over Wolves would have taken them up to 38 points, same amount of points as Wolves. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, okay, not too far away from those European spots, and maybe they can push for, at least matching what they did last season, which was a 10th place finish and well above most expectations. But they did what Fulham do quite well, and that's played pretty well for the most part. Have a 15-minute spell in the second half that was totally baffling and lost the game. So yeah, it's been a story of the season, actually. I mean, there's been lots of parts to it, from striker issues, goal scoring issues, a purple patch in front of goal, and then a collapse. But it just felt like the weekend just gone was a chance for them to really just take themselves away from the bottom half and think, actually, maybe we can do what we did last year.
Hi, Pete. I was just going to ask about Rodrigo Muniz, who is someone that, if I'm honest, I don't think I'd recognise if I bumped into him on the street. I know so little about him as a player. Can you just give us a kind of insight with a sort of look ahead to the Tottenham game about what kind of threat he poses?
Yeah, Muniz is a really interesting story. He was one of Marco Silva's first signings when he joined the club in the Championship. He spent the first season as a backup to Aleksandar Mitrovic, so led off scraps really in terms of minutes. Had a good minutes to goal ratio. It actually was pretty close to Mitrovic, and obviously Mitrovic scored 43 goals in the Championship. Then in the Premier League last year, went out on loan to Middlesbrough, had a terrible time. He's played the first few games. Michael Carrick was unappointed, then didn't play at all, and spent 3 months basically in the stands up on Teesside. And then this season, he's again just sort of been waiting for his opportunity. Mitrovic left. Fulham had goal-scoring issues. Raul Jimenez couldn't score. Carlos Vinicius wasn't scoring. And then we got to January, and Raul Jimenez had suddenly hit form, scored a couple of goals, looked like he was back to his old self, but then did his hamstring. So Fulham were like, right, we need a striker. We went out and got Amanda Breuer. Breuer wasn't available for the game against Burnley, so Muniz got another chance, and he took it. He scored his first goal and has looked like a player transformed. He's got a lot of attributes that are quite similar to Mitrovic, and I think that's kind of suited Fulham, who are so used to playing with a target forward, someone to go direct to run off, to gain space around him. But confidence has been a massive thing. It was a big thing for Jimenez before his injury. And it's been a big thing for him as well. And he's gone from being a young 22-year-old Brazilian player who looked like it wasn't really going to work out in English football to suddenly scoring 5 and 6 and looking like a possible solution for Fulham longer term. It is a purple patch, so we'll see how long it lasts. But he's certainly provided them with a focal point, and he's scoring goals. He's got a knack for a goal inside the box. He's a good finisher, and that's really come to the fore in these recent weeks.
Is there a sense that Fulham have changed the way they've played in certainly the last few months? When Muniz came in, a couple of Fulham fan friends said to me they're asking him maybe to play on the halfway line, hold it up, intricate passing, not his game. And actually, I looked at some numbers a few weeks ago. Fulham's crossing numbers have gone up again, like they were under Mitrovic. A lot of crosses. Willian putting in a lot of crosses. Actually, as you just said, he's now a focal point, stand in the box. That's where he's best. Yeah,
so last season was all, you've got Mitrovic in the box. You want to get the ball to him in there and get it on his head or just get it within 12 yards and you'll back him to score. This season's just been about adjusting. The start of the season was difficult. They weren't creating many chances. It was quite clear that at the top end of the pitch they were, really struggling. And then Raul Jimenez, he was on the back of an 18-month goal drought. So trying to get him firing was a was a big goal, and they managed that. But Jimenez was a different striker. You know, he likes to drop off. He likes to link up a lot more than Mitrovic does. He's not really a poacher. I mean, when he's at his best, he thrives and can do that. But he certainly was far more involved in build-up than Mitrovic was, particularly with his feet. And then obviously Jimenez drops out, and Muniz has come in, and Muniz felt so raw for so long. You know, the ball would go up to him, it wouldn't stick. He would work really hard. You could see the intensity with which he was playing, but just it never seemed to work. It's just that was a little quality gap. But since he scored that first goal, was up at Burnley, it's almost just given him a new lease of life in terms of confidence. He's a handful for central defenders. He gave Adam Webster of Brighton a really tough afternoon in the last home game, and I'm sure he'll look to do that again. He just has a real tenacity, which probably sets him apart. A work rate that you wouldn't get from Mitrovic, but has also helped Fulham off the ball as well as on it.
Peter, we've been having an interesting discussion on this pod in light of the news that Spurs are raising season ticket prices 6% this week. And there's a lot of talk around about PSR, revenue, all of this sort of stuff. I see Fulham as another club that is really trying to build. And you take a look at the squad against Wolves with the likes of Paulini on the bench, not able to get into the first team when he's fit. That is a squad that has been developed. You're seeing the new stand at Fulham. Talk to us about, because I think it's useful to obviously contrast against other clubs. Talk to us about what Fulham have been doing with their season ticket prices. Where do they stand at the minute, and how do the fans feel about what's going on there?
Yeah, there's a lot of unhappiness at the moment. It's been one of the contrast to what has been probably one of the best periods to be a Fulham fan in terms of on the pitch. You've got a young coach playing really exciting football, won a championship title, the first league title the club have won for 20 years. They reached the League Cup semi-final, 10th place finish last year, most wins that Fulham have had in the Premier League era. So you'd say on the pitch, things are going great. Off the pitch, you mentioned season ticket prices. They've risen in successive years. This year coming into this season was an 18% rise, and that's led to fan protests. There was a protest before the game against Manchester United.
So that was coming into this season, was it?
Yeah, coming into this season.
Wow.
So we don't know for next season. We don't know what their prices will be yet. We're still waiting to find out what the club are going to do. We had a protest against Manchester United where fans held up yellow cards. And it's felt like there's been a sort of a growing disconnect. And the fact that it's got to the point where, they're led by the Fulham Supporters Trust, that they want to and are willing to organise protests and have launched a campaign, an affordable Fulham campaign to stop them pricing out some fans is indicative of that, really.
But what is it you think that fans want? Because Fulham now are an established Premier League club, challenging mid-table. As you said earlier, had they won on the weekend, they'd be pushing for Europe. That's what fans want. And the board will say, well, we're in a world of PSR or this new revenue system that's coming in. We need to generate these funds. So where's the midpoint here?
I think it's trying to find one that doesn't lead to a situation where you price out fans who go every week, or in what has been a particular issue with Fulham are match day prices of those who can't afford a season ticket, but then can go to certain games, but can't afford the match day prices, which have been some of the highest in the league. I think with PSR, it acutely affects Fulham, particularly because they just have no alternative revenue streams. It's a very different model of a club. They're a very small club. The Riverside stand will make a big difference for them. The club talk about it as being a game changer, and it will be, because it will give them a revenue stream 365 days of the year. It's going to be, there's a hotel that's going to be in there, a members club. They're going to make the Thames Park. They're going to complete it behind that stand. That's been delayed 3 times, and that's not helped at all in terms of their financial situation. But I think for fans, that they don't want to be seen as the ones who's having to plug the gaps. Now, the owner, Shahid Khan, has put more than £500 million into Fulham. Fulham wouldn't be a Premier League club without that kind of investment, because they just don't have the infrastructure, as I was saying, to sustain it. But I think there is a balance, because the marginal gains you can make from gate receipts, from what could be seen as it is a small percentage of revenue by contrast to what else clubs receive. And I think it's not just Fulham. I think it's a league-wide issue. It's particularly in London. It seems to be a problem as well, with prices going up. And I think for the fans, it's just trying to just find that ground where you say, well, look, we understand the price is going. We know that to have the Fulham squad, a lot of the TV revenue goes straight onto the wages with a club like Fulham. And then you've got, right, well, we've got to invest to build a team, as you're saying. And that's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to stay in the Premier League. So I don't think anyone's doubting the pressures. It's just you can't make that up with ticket price increases, I think is what Fulham fans will argue.
Interesting, yeah. And we're in the same situation. Looking ahead to Saturday, Craven Cottage has been a happy hunting ground in recent seasons. It wasn't for many a season for Tottenham. I remember walking out of there after 28 minutes of that FA Cup game when we were 3-0 down with 10 men. I'd had enough. But how do you see it go?
Was that Raziak?
Possibly. And Michael Dawson got sent off and Fulham scored like 8 penalties in the first half. How are you feeling for Saturday? And also, is Tottenham slayer Adama Traore going to play?
He will be, and he's looked great.
Good.
Stop.
Tottenham slayer.
He loves us.
I absolutely love him.
He loves us.
He's not started many games because he's had quite a difficult season. He came in on a free. He injured his hamstring, came back briefly at Villa and then injured it again. So it's been quite frustrating. But his last 3 performances have all been cameos from the bench. He set up the winner at Old Trafford. He scored the 3rd goal against Brighton and he looked really sharp against Wolves as well. He's getting closer to that first start. I don't know when he will get it.
Saturday,
but either way.
If they look at his history, Saturday would be the perfect time.
He's a game changer. And I think he's part of the fact that Fulham have a much, they've got their strongest squad of the season at the moment. I think the bench they had at Wolves was certainly the strongest. João Palhinha came back from suspension, couldn't get into the team because of the form of Harrison Reed and Sasa Lukic. So as a team, they're in a good position. I think there'll be real frustration about how the game at Wolves played out. And they'll be wanting to put that right this weekend. And they will take the game to Tottenham. And I expect it to be quite an entertaining game as well.
Got to get a prediction off you.
Well, Spurs were so impressive against Villa over the weekend. And speaking of teams with players coming back to form and fitness at the moment, I think Spurs may edge it. I expect Fulham to score. Tempted to say score draw, but I'll go 2-1 Tottenham, I think.
We'll take that.
We'll take that.
All day long. Peter, will you be at the game?
I won't be. I'm away this weekend for one of the rare games I'm missing, so I shan't be enjoying it, sadly.
Enjoy your weekend off, and thank you so much for joining us, and we'll speak to you soon.
No problem.
Cheers,
guys.
Peter. Thank you.
Cheers. Well, I don't think you do.
No, I think you do. I think they'll, at the
I
moment...
don't think you do. They're the most consistently inconsistent
They'll
team.
play decent football, but you can get at them. I
Yes.
think that's what I mean. But really good chat about the season ticket stuff as well, because we're not alone in this, quite clearly.
It's every fan, everywhere.
18%.
They'd have pulled this new stadium down if Levy had ever done that.
Oh,
I think I might have joined them, to be honest.
I did wonder when he said that what that was, because in my mind Fulham were always on the cheaper side of things. But like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean,
was
look,
it from
Spurs
£100 to 100?
I think their most
180,
expensive is now
yeah.
650.
and
away from the
that
big
will be
stand.
that will be the argument from Spurs fans, which I get entirely right. The baseline for Fulham was much lower as a starting point,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
18%, is still a cheap season ticket comparatively at Spurs. So it's got to be taken into context. But Fulham fans don't really care what Spurs fans are paying; they care what they're paying. And
correct.
every fan of every club has the same issues where they're looking at it going, why has it been passed on to us? And I get it, I understand it. But
before we finish, I just want to bring up another bit of analysis that Ali's done, and I'm going to start it with Timo Werner. I asked the two Jakes last week, 15 million, which apparently is now, according to Fabrizio Romano, possibly 17 million, the price to pay for Timo Werner. I put it on our TikTok channel because we're down with the kids here on Echo of Glory. And a lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of people saying, cheap option. Well, therefore, so was Udogie, Vicario, Sarr. 17 million, Timo Werner, yes or no?
Yes.
yeah,
I
like the
thought
guy.
you'd be straight in yes.
no.
What's the risk?
Well, there isn't any risk. It's more a question. It's hard to know because you don't know who else is on the shopping list and what we want to do and so on and so forth, right? So it's hard to. But right here, right now, it's minimal risk, and I would be inclined to say yes.
I'm not saying that there isn't someone out there better than him and that getting Timo Werner solves the problem on the left side. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you've got a player who's used to who's learnt how to play Postecoglou's
that's
football.
key.
And I
Yeah.
Has settled,
Correct.
is liked, has scored some good goals.
yeah,
Some
and I think he's going to be
goals,
reliable. I don't
Um,
think he gets injured very often. We've got a lot of games next season,
Has-
whether it's
has
Europa
won
League or Champions
has
League.
won the Champions League played in and won the Champions League final.
Yeah.
Like there's not much downside to me for
Yeah.
if in this day and age, if you buy a player for £17 million and it doesn't work out, you're kind of like, well, that's not the worst thing ever, is it?
I agree.
Yeah.
But the centre forward thing for me is still an issue. I'm not convinced about Son as a centre forward, but I know he can do it. Can he play? If he was fit every week, would he play 38 games down the middle? I don't know. Ali, you compared our two centre forwards this season, Son and Richarlison.
Yeah. So this is just comparing their numbers. So you've got Son. This is overall numbers in the Premier League this season. Son has played roughly 650 minutes more.
So this isn't head-to-head
Richarlison.
playing in the 9. This is
No.
just minutes on the pitch.
Overall minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Son 14 goals to Richarlison's 10, all of which came in that run, I think, for Richarlison, more or less. Maybe one of them came. Oh, it was the Sheffield United one, was
Yeah.
not in that run.
Yeah.
Son has outscored his expected goals of 7.9 by 6.1, which is the best over performance in the entire Premier
Is
League.
it?
Yeah.
What a finisher.
Richarlison has more expected goals than Son in way fewer minutes, but 4 fewer goals overall. And that also speaks to this other stat, which is maybe more easier to understand than expected goals. Big chances scored. Son scored 10 out of 13. Richarlison has scored 8 out of 15. So I don't think anyone would be that surprised to hear that, to see numbers that back up the idea that Son is a better finisher than Richarlison. I guess the surprising thing, I know Son's played a fair amount of his minutes out wide, but that's not to say that wide forwards for Spurs don't get into good goal-scoring positions. Think about the tap-in that Brennan Johnson scored.
And Werner scored 2 in the
Werner,
last 2.
Exactly. So I do think that having played 50% more minutes than Richarlison, the most striking thing for me here is that Son hasn't got into good goal-scoring positions enough, or whether that's his fault or the team's fault. For Richarlison to have higher expected goals than Son, having played 600 fewer minutes than him, is actually quite striking. And maybe that speaks to Richarlison's good movement as a
Well,
9.
we've said it before, he's a fox in the box.
Yeah,
whereas Son really isn't.
And is that something that Son needs to work on? His finishing is absolutely unreal.
Yeah.
Right now it is the best in the Premier League this season, and it's by quite a distance as well. That overperformance, and so Richarlison doesn't score that chance that Son scored on the weekend.
I'm not convinced he scores a 1-on-1 against Palace either.
No,
Certainly you don't go through going,
no.
he's going to score.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was similar to that one that he
Werner-
missed, that Richarlison missed. Was it
Brighton or
Brighton
Burnley?
game? Yeah,
it's one against Burnley as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, like Richarlison had a really, really good run where I don't think many of us would have said that he shouldn't be playing at that time as the 9. But I do just wonder if there's sort of Son is not the complete product, and maybe maybe it's his movement in the box or something like that he needs to work on. But I think like it's just an interesting comparison. I thought
Right.
that
On the back of that, quick question. Next season, Son is our number 9, yes or no?
yes,
Gary?
I mean, are we selling Richarlison for 60 million and picking up another striker? Or is
No,
it just,
Richarlison's on the bench.
well, I mean, then if we're not signing another striker, then yes, Son.
Would you sign it? Would you spend this 70 million on a new striker?
Yeah, I think. Look, if you sold Richarlison, then I think, and you had the opportunity to go and sign a top class striker, I think you go and do that. And I think you have the utilisation of Son on the left wing or covering in the number 9 when needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
hard to disagree.
Going to end with predictions for Saturday. Fulham away, Ali, Tweedale.
They don't. Fulham. Maybe it's something to do with it being like a nice place to go. It doesn't scare me.
No.
Fulham don't scare me.
No.
I suppose there's not been too many poor results, as you sort of mentioned earlier there. I think Spurs will win 3-1.
It is a difficult one. And I prepared some stats here because I knew we had Ali coming in. I think he's not going to have all the glory. So this is Fulham in a nutshell, right? So Arsenal have dropped 20 points this season. 25% of the points that they've dropped have been against Fulham. They've dropped 5 points against Fulham. Fulham must be a great team. 28% of the total number of points that Burnley have picked up this season have been against Fulham. That's true. You can check that, right?
That is amazing.
So, is that not just...
Well, that's what Peter said.
Is that the best stat of the... that's the best stat today, right?
Undoubtedly, and I'm going
Thank
to
you.
take it back to the office. And
We need a graphic made up.
Yeah.
Inconsistent Fulham is what Peter said.
So who knows? Who knows?
What kind of, I don't know what explanation there is for that, because Burnley...
It's a funny old game, Saint.
Yeah.
It's probably a lot to do with what we've been speaking about in the show, that Fulham are a mid-table team, and against somebody like Burnley, they're expected to come out and play and probably get beat. But against Arsenal, they're going to sit in. And what it tells me about this weekend is that very likely they're going to sit in a much lower block. They might not come out as much as Peter was suggesting. I don't think they did that so much against Arsenal, and when you look at the stats of that game. So I think they will sit in. I think it will be a frustrating game. It will be a very difficult game. Definitely not one we want to go one down in. We should have more than enough to beat them.
Prediction.
I'll say 2-0 Tottenham.
I'm going another 4-0. Sod it. Yeah. Just on one of those runs where we score a lot of goals. And then there's an international break and it all stops.
Clean sheets.
The lesser spotted
But
clean
both
sheet.
of you have backed Spurs to keep
I
a clean
suspect
sheet.
we've not. When have we kept consecutive clean sheets in a row this season? Maybe at the start of the season. I mean, it was our first clean sheet since Forest on Sunday.
2-0 United, 2-0 Bournemouth, beginning of the season.
There you go.
1-0 Luton, 2-0 Fulham.
Okay, so not
So
since
twice.
not since October.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you for your presence and your stats and your analysis. Just a quick reminder where people can find you.
TheAnalyst.com or Google OPTA Analyst.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. And up the Spurs.